Hey, former from Evo, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we are officially 6 weeks and a day away from the start of the college basketball season, so who better to get on in a few minutes than Justin Perri? He does such amazing work over at Chalk Quality Bets, and we're going to be talking about just some of the things that he takes a look at in terms of his handicapping for the upcoming season. As you may recall, if you listened to my podcast yesterday, I was talking about these secret scrimmages, how I don't take a ton from that. We're going to be talking with him about that. I know that we're going to be talking about the Big East landscape as well, two teams in particular. We're going to be diving in on St. John's. We're going to be diving in on Xavier as well. I'm going to bring up how we take a look at these coaches in year number 2, how big of a transitionary year that is from year 1 to year 2, because I do feel like sometimes some of these year 1 coaches come in with some unrealistic expectations. We'll talk about some of those year 1 coaches as well. I'll bring up the angle that I always look at, these coaches that take over a program, they bring over some of their guys to be able to have some chemistry, to be able to hit the ground running right away, and I know that Justin is going to piggyback off of some of the things that causes him to bet/fade teams early on in the season as well. So it's a nice wide-ranging conversation with him. That's going to be happening in a few minutes as we are mandated on this podcast to take one break. So this is going to be a very short segment number 1. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways we all fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at Jaden_D1. Keep in mind, LRCM, maybe does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, and did not get in any of those Twitter/X questions, so please do fire those in, because we are now about 6 weeks away from the start of the college basketball season. I'm down to just 4 conference previews at this point. We've got the Bigs, the Big 10, the Big 12, the Big East, along with the SEC, and I'll be doing about one of those a week, because if I were to do them all this week, we would be out of conference previews to do, and it does take a few days to be able to do those conference previews, be able to get the guests all lined up, everything like that, so just a little bit behind the curtain there, but do want you guys to send those in just so that way I can emphasize the angles that you're looking at for the upcoming college basketball season, just the nooks and crannies that you need to be able to get research and get all ready to go, because we've got still 6 weeks remaining. If you have not done a lot in terms of your college basketball research, you still have time to be able to get into gear, to be able to get set for what is going to be a great college basketball season and really cover a lot of these teams. Like, if you're trying to cram a week before the start of the college basketball season, you're up a creek without a rowing device, unless you're looking at only like 1 or 2 specific conferences. So please do fire those in, and I will continue to do my best to be able to get on great guests that always lend great insights, much like our good friend Justin Perri, who joins me on the flip side right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast, and it is always great to be joined by Justin Perri. He does such great work over at Chalk Quality Bets, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Coupled with that, I know he does a little bit of everything over there at Action Network. He's taking a look at some baseball over at Pitcher List. I know he does the Justin Perri Show, and hey, before walking bets were cool, he was walking around in the park giving out college basketball bets last season as well. So it's a very well-rounded 5-tool man that's able to guard every position. He is positionless, as you're able to follow him on Twitter/X at his first and last name, Justin Perri. Last name spelled Perri, the number 8 altogether. And Justin, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Greg, I am excited to share that we will be back in the park this college basketball season for some more park walk picks. Look, I don't want to take full credit for the walking bets phenomenon, but I like to think I have a specific bounce in my step that some people can't mimic. So it's an exciting time. We are only a few months away from college basketball being back in our day-to-day lives. There's a lot going on, a lot to sort of decipher, maybe try to get that early edge, figure out who's legit and who's not. If you're really committed to knowing everything about college hoops, this is when you're studying. So it's always fun to be here.
It is always fun to have you aboard, and we're getting closer and closer to the upcoming college basketball season. And I talked about this a little bit on the show yesterday. I want to get your thoughts as well, just in terms of what we're going to be seeing in the next few weeks, as it's going to start to be exhibition season. in, you're going to get these, and air quotes here, secret scrimmages where you'll get results that about 5 people saw with no verification whatsoever. And do you take anything out of these? Because I think that there are some people that think that their team is going to be going to the Final Four because they had 1 or 2 nice secret scrimmages. And I think that calling it a nothing burger would be going too far. But I do think that there's a lot of overreaction that happens from people that are very, very starved of college basketball in late September, early October.
Yeah, I mean, look, teams are just starting to figure out rotations. You could probably argue that some coaches don't figure out their rotations until, most of the way through the non-conference schedule, right? Because to a lot of these coaches, especially at the, high major level, those non-conference games don't matter too much, and they're just tune-ups to get ready for the conference season and then the tournament season. And it's sort of stage by stage. So personally, I don't take too much credence from anything going on with college basketball teams in September, October, because, what matters really is form in February and March. You can maybe start to understand, to get a little mathematical, the upper and the lower bounds of things. And maybe these scrimmages show you an extra level that you didn't think a team could take it to. But at the other end, what is the underlying truth of the type of performance you're going to really see? And I just don't think anything is super indicative of what full season form is truly going to look like. And then at the other end, any information that you're getting, unless you're a true college insider that is beating the other 95% of us, that information isn't going to very likely be giving you an edge if, Trilly Donovan and John Rothstein are tweeting it out. The books know who those people are. You have to be another level intertwined and beating those people to breaks to really maybe start getting an edge because of something and someone else doesn't.
And I'm so glad that you mentioned that as well, because what are some of the things that you do take a look at? Because there is some information that you can get, but the place that I always talk about on this podcast that the books might not be alert of is things like, fan forums, where I don't think a bookmaker has the just time on their hands to go to an Abilene Christian fan forum or something like that, and or some of these student reporters who, I used to be a student reporter back in the day over at UW Oshkosh. They do great work, and they've got more access than darn near anyone to that university.
Oh, I mean, look, I think injury news and who's available and getting in on those forums of the college students saying that they saw starter XYZ walking around with a limp today, those things all have their merit. Don't get me wrong. Again, you have to be there first, right? You need to hear about it early. It's a game of information. And so if you want to pay attention to that type of stuff and learn who, the accounts on the message boards that are always posting these things are always around the team, and maybe it turns out it's a student manager or something. I don't know. Again, those are not the most reliable angles. You can't be like, oh yeah, that's how I expect to win in college basketball this year. I wouldn't really call that handicapping. You can definitely do really, really, really well in the informational game. Injury news, releases, official releases. College is very underreported, right? Especially college basketball. There's 360 plus teams. So that is definitely a way, if you're more up on the injury news of a mid-major, low-major team, you can certainly beat the line. There's no doubt about it. That's not something that I don't think anyone's hiding. I think, sports books have accommodated that by limit structures, right? You can't really bet that much on those extra games where you're going to beat them on the news overnight. And by the time you get to 3 to 4 hours out and the limits are a little bit more serious, they're going to have the same informational access as you 9 times out of 10. So there's no silver bullet, or we'd be on a beach. But I do think it's an interesting way to attack college basketball because there certainly is green grass there.
Yep, certainly. And it's always interesting to see people playing the old game of try to find player X in the Instagram post, that if he's not there, that means that he's automatically out, when it might just be a person taking photos that were at a little bit of a bad angle and or took the photos 2 minutes earlier / later than when they warmed up as well, which That's always interesting to take a look at, too, as Justin Perri, who does such tremendous work over at Shot Quality Bets, he's joining me right here on the Coast to Coast Hoops. And Justin, I do think that it is interesting this time of year to just take a look at the way that these teams are coming together. And I do think that it is important to be checking in on some of these guys that they do come back to practice as well. Because like one team I'm starting to feel very bullish on is Xavier. They had Zach Fremantle miss all of last season. I think monitoring a situation like that is very big. And even though I don't think that's an end-all be-all looking at practice, and you were mentioning it too in terms of injury information, we're all getting a lot of the same injury information, what have you. But I do think that this time of year, just these guys being able to get into practice, just being able to gain chemistry, and just having returning chemistry, I think is so big for backing and fading teams early, whereas a team that was just put together on the fly with a bunch of transfers, or a team that I might be feeling a little bit more, shall we say, timid on towards the beginning part of the season.
Yeah, I fully agree. Big fan of Zach Fremantle, too. So
Yeah.
I like that you brought up Sean Miller, Big East, Xavier. Some of my, favorite terms in college basketball. Xavier saw a little bit of a dip last year. Fremantle's presence was expected to be a big part of this team. And the injury meant not being a top 40 team and sort of sitting around that top 60 range. And that's just the impact and I guess the high level of parity that there was around those, I would say like borderline tournament teams, right? That next level down from the bubble. And Xavier was right there. I think this year they return to a, in the field conversation. It's going to be really interesting to see how they play. Of course, David McKnight expected to be a also, very big part of this team, along with like Ryan Conwell, Dante Maddox Jr. So I'm excited. I mean, they do have some guys. Jerome Hunter is going to be another senior on that team. He's going to be able to give you some points as well. Look, I think they're going to be a fun part of a Big East that is totally up for grabs. Like I say that like in a way because I think Connecticut, Creighton, and St. John's are all going to be jockeying for that number one spot the entire season. And then you're going to have teams like Marquette, Xavier, and I guess maybe Villanova in the wings a little bit. But I don't know. If you're asking me for a future on the Big East right now, I don't know. I can't tell you. Connecticut is not the powerhouse they were last year. The three-peat is going to be difficult. Creighton and St. John's have a lot more talent. I mean, Kadari Richmond in New York is going to be so much fun.
Yeah, that is going to be so much fun. And I think that the entire landscape around where you are out there in the great state of New York, there's going to be a lot of good basketball, in my opinion, that's going to be played there. As St. John's, you mentioned it, being able to bring in that backcourt duo, I think it's going to be big. Kadari Richmond along with Davion Smith. These guys, I think, are going to be tremendous in the backcourt. And that's something I take a look at as well, because I feel like there's a lot of year two coaches that didn't necessarily have the blend that they wanted in year number one, didn't necessarily have the players. I felt like Slick Rick Pitino was one of those guys that sort of fell in that vector as he had to turn over pretty much everyone except for Joel Soriano. Feels like this is just a little bit more of his team. And how much do you take a look at that as well? Because in this day and age where you see a guy like TJ Otzelberger turn Iowa State a few years ago from a 2-win team, with both of those wins coming against the SWAC, by the way, to winning 2 games in the NCAA tournament, I think that there gets to be more unrealistic expectations. And when a coach doesn't necessarily win like 25 games in year number one, folks are a little bit more out on them than they should be.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. That first off season, you're getting your own office set up.
And you don't have a full off season.
Right, exactly. And you might not have a full off season. And you're getting your own office set up. You're settling in as a coach, and then you're expected to perform at the highest level as though you've had a full season plus with your hands on the reins, learning where, everything is, getting your routine down. Like, I don't think the expectations were high internally for Rick Pitino in the first year. And I don't think that's anything that anyone should take any offense to, because it's hard to walk into the Big East in your first year with a team that really isn't fully yours and win. I think this year is a much bigger year, right? I don't know that he gets infinite swings. I mean, I know Repol was winning some horse races that'll help continue to fund the St. John Red Storm, but I don't know. I think this is a big year, like in terms of just getting the energy right. Richmond was a guy he clearly wanted to go after. They did what they had to do to get him. I'm excited to see how it goes. This team's going to be as formidable as maybe any in how many years back for St. John's do you want to go since they had like a real top 20 team that everybody agreed on? Like, yeah, 2024's team was good, but like it has been a long time. I'm really excited to see how this goes. I mean, you've had some great players in the history of St. John's in the last couple of years. So yeah, I'm excited. Soriano did great last season, but I do think that this year there will be a good chance to step up with Davion Smith, Aaron Scott, RJ Lewis. These guys are good. I think there's going to be a good presence there with those upperclassmen. And hopefully, Jaden Glover mixes in okay. Simon Wilcher as well should be formidable parts of this rotation. And I mean, Wilcher did okay last year, but he should take a step up. And this should be a good Patino team. I have them, firmly in my top 20, should be in the top 25 and ranked for most of the season, I think.
I'm right there with you, and they would probably be doing that for the first time since, 2000, when they had like Bootsy Thornton, Eric Barkley, LeVar Postal, guys like that. So, yep. I mean, it has been quite a while, and those are some old school names right there. So anyone that remembers that team, shout out to you, as Justin Perri does such great work over at Shot Quality Bets, is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Justin, when you're preparing for the upcoming season, is there maybe an angle or two that you take a look at for teams that you're a little bit more bullish/bearish on that maybe not a lot of people are looking into? And I'll bring up the example that I go into, because I always just love taking a look at these teams that they've got multiple guys that follow their coach. Like this year, Indiana State certainly fits a bill with Josh Schertz being able to bring over Robbie Avila, bringing over part of that backcourt from Indiana State, I think is big. Like that South Florida team last year, bringing over all those Kennesaw guys were big. And even staying within the conference, like we were talking about Kadari Richmond, him going from Seton Hall to St. John's, I put a little bit more stock into that than if you were to go to, say, Washington or something like that. But is there a thing or two that you take a look at this offseason that might be a little bit more out of sight, out of mind, but it's going to be a big way of you just taking a look at this upcoming season and how you bet the first few weeks of the season?
I do think that coaching tenure is a big deal. I think that it's very hard for coaches to go into new programs and win. I do think that, like this season, Josh Schertz, while he might have some continuity, I would expect it to be difficult. New teams and new conferences, it is difficult. It is not easy. You get baby brothered, essentially, and it's hard because you don't know fully what you're up against. And part of what gave a lot of people success in their past, whether they're talking about Dusty May at Michigan, Schertz going to the A-10 and all that, it's because of that familiarity. And they're not going to have it, right? It's going to be an advantage for the opponent because it's sort of going to be that whole, I don't know where my office is. I don't know where the bathroom is. And yet I have to coach today. And of course, I'm exaggerating, but the idea is still there. We saw it with Patino. His St. John's team underachieved. I would not be surprised to see new teams in new conferences underachieve, new coaches in new conferences underachieve. I do think that oftentimes, honestly, Greg, the opposite is sort of played in the media, right? Like you're going to get favorable light of Dusty May. You're going to get favorable light of Josh Schertz. You're going to get people wanting to bet on the storylines. And if anything, I think it opens up a very wide window to go against those things. I don't necessarily know that Michigan's going to just be a success in basketball this season, but I know they're going to be a popular team to bet on. And I would bet that they're going to have value going against them, probably by a wide margin if your numbers are accurate. We don't know how they're going to go, but I would imagine looking back that the early lines for Michigan are going to be pretty tilted towards them, if we use what we learned through a full season. Again, we'll see. We'll come back. We'll talk about it at the end of the year. But yeah, new coaches, new situations, new conferences, all those things, it seems pretty straightforward. But honestly, often those things get people excited, which leads to bets on them. People like those stories. People, want to bet on what they hear about. I do expect those to be profitable fades.
And to your point about a team like Michigan, I'd be feeling a little bit better on them if one of those guys from the backcourt, like a John L. Davis, was coming over. Then I'd be like, okay, I'm a bit more in on them. And I don't think that Michigan is going to be what they were last year. They went through a situation where their best player was suspended for road games, which I can't remember the last time I've ever seen anything quite like that. So I feel like we can bank on their top player not being suspended for road games this season, but certainly I do think that there's going to be some intrigue, and some of these first-year coaches are some of the most profitable in all of college basketball. Saw that with South Florida last year, and some of these not so great. I still remember Pacific a few years ago trying to replace Damon Stoudemire, and they became the worst team against the spread in all of college basketball 2 out of 3 years. But a man that is always top-notch with his college basketball insight, a man that does a great job looking on so many different fronts is you, Justin. Let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, we're really excited for the college basketball season. It's going to be my third over with shot quality bets, where we use our own homegrown metric to analyze every single game. It's called shot quality, and honestly, couldn't be more excited to be talking about it within like 6 weeks. So if you're interested in how we essentially calculate an expected score of every game, we're going to have shows, content, articles, all that good stuff. It's really accurate. Again, that's the beauty of it, is that it is more accurate towards what is actually happening on the court and more predictive to future production of players, of teams, than actual scores by about a factor of 2.5. So we're really excited about it. It's going to be another great season. We're going to be doing everything. You can follow us on all social media at Shot Quality Bets. And of course, in the meantime, doing, a little baseball here and there, but college basketball, baby, right around the corner. And of course, shout out to you, Greg, for having me on the pod as always.
It is always great to have Justin on board, as he has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to college basketball. He absolutely, all months out of the year, is taking a look at this great game, getting set for what is going to be an incredible season, and it's always incredible to get him aboard. So big thanks to Justin for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And if you like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you hear podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at Judah_D1. Keep in mind, letters they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please send these into the timeline, and the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, and I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast. Regular season, off season, rain, shine, it does not matter. We're getting you set for what is going to be an amazing college basketball season. We've got 4 conference previews left to do, and then after that, we'll start making some money, and I will be back with you guys once again tomorrow, so I'm with you guys all 366 days this year. So do appreciate you tuning in today, and I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.